At the weekend, the Labor Party held its conference and delegates were treated to a video montage of all the party's achievements in power. Take a look. As you can see, they're promoting their record on housing, child poverty, climate change, you name it. Joining us this morning is the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, off the back of a poll last night that, well, Jenna Lynch, our political editor, called it disastrous for you guys, Prime Minister. How are you feeling this morning?
Oh, yeah, I came off the conference floor having made the announcements and then got told I had to be whisked away for an interview on a poll. But such is life in politics. I think one of the things I keep in the back of my mind, of course, Ryan, you know I've been totally consistent in the way I've talked about polls over the years. I take every single one of them with a grain of salt because it was all for me about people and what we're hearing from them about their needs rather than fixating on polls because they are so variable. Our internal, for instance, shows National and Labor neck and neck. So, you know, in that environment where you're getting lots of competing different information, instead of focusing on the difference in the polls, I focus on our people.
I would like to point out that Newshub's research poll is the most consistent and close to election night, but we won't go there.
Actually, that is inaccurate, but I don't want to actually get into that. That's actually not that useful or interesting for your viewers, but off air we'll do that.
On one hand, you don't listen to the polls. On the other hand, you know exactly which ones are accurate.
On election night, I do, absolutely. Yeah, because election night counts quite a lot.
Yeah. No, look, I'm actually wearing, you won't be able to see, but I'm wearing my red jacket today because I thought you guys could use a little bit of support after.
No one is going to read into that.
Prime Minister, I wanted to talk about some of the things because we just played a clip from that video that, you know, talks about your progress, your achievements in power. To be honest, I was quite surprised to see that the first words popping up on the screen were things like housing and child poverty. Are you really saying you're proud of your record on house prices?
I'm saying that I'm proud of the progress we've made. I am.
But what is that?
And
the median house price is $300K more than it was when you started.
We've helped over 60,000 first-home buyers into the home. We have lifted the number of first-home buyers in the market now to 24% of the market. On public housing, we alone as a government have produced 13% of the community housing and public housing stock. All those state houses you see out there, we've built 13% of it in 5 years. But what you didn't add is, of course, I always give the disclaimer. Is everything perfect? No. Is it finished? Is the job done? Absolutely not. But it is important for us to talk about the progress we've made.
But why would you put it front and centre on your campaign video when house prices, you know, we are dreaming of John Key house prices where it was $300,000 less for the median price of a home? I mean, why would you put that front and centre on a video?
And that's a 5-minute video that you've clipped to 10 seconds that is chronologically ordered about some of the first things we did. And some of the first thing we did, because we inherited a housing crisis, was when we were elected in those first 100 days, we banned the sale of houses to foreign buyers and we stopped the sale of state houses.
Yeah, but it hasn't done anything.
Those were amongst the first things we did.
They're more expensive than they've ever been.
And yet, in another interview, I could easily be asked about prices coming down because that's of concern to people.
Because inflation's out of control.
So, yes, we want to keep... So I guess, Ryan, the point again I would come back to is we have increased the percentage of first-home buyers in the market, but I will not argue it's perfect or that it's done.
Okay.
But we are starting to see that growth in supply, 20,000 more houses being built a year than when we came in several years ago. That is starting to make a difference.
Are there more buyers in the market? In other words, you know, you're talking about a percentage, right? Are there more in whole numbers buyers, first-home buyers in the market right now than when you started?
So that's as a percentage of the total number of buyers in the market now. First-home buyers are making up 24% of that. Could I tell you whether or not what the total number is overall? I don't have that number to hand.
Wouldn't that be important?
What's important to us is the makeup of the market because that indicates where they are and how well they're able to compete against what previously was quite an investor-heavy market.
Okay, let's talk about child poverty. Julie Chapman from Kids Can, Dave Latelli, Sir Michael Jones, who does work with a food bank here in in Auckland, they all say that poverty is worse now than pre-COVID, and yet you're out there saying that it's in decline.
Of course, what I'm reflecting is what we know about the numbers. It does not mean that there isn't poverty out there. I think this is a really important point that we have to keep making. Just because I say that we've seen a decrease because the statistics, independent of us as government, tell us that. All 9 of our child poverty measures are now declining. We've lifted 66,000 children out of poverty. It does not mean that there aren't children in need or families in need. And in fact, we have to really pay particular attention to those who are in the lowest quartile, even though they are self-reporting relative to the GFC, tells us that actually there's fewer people who aren't able to get the basics than due that last economic crisis. It doesn't mean that there isn't hardship.
And no one's saying that there is no hardship. It actually sounds like a little bit like you're kind of spinning the numbers, Prime Minister, because what these people are saying who are on the front line is that it's actually worse.
Is that all I can do, if there were numbers saying all were increasing, you would buy that and you would hammer it and you would promote it. But because the numbers tell us it is decreasing, then the numbers get questioned. I think the only point that I can make here again is that, yes, what those you are speaking about, all of whom we support in some form as government, they do see hardship. Of course they do. We do too. That's why we're not finished. But we have started to make a difference because all of the numbers and surveys on income levels, which is what the poverty measures are by and large, tell us it is in decline. It's not by accident. When you increase benefit rates, when you see increases in the minimum wage, when you increase working for families, when you increase the accommodation supplement, and when you do things like put food in schools, those things reduce child poverty, and that's what we're seeing.
But their costs are going up. That's the point, isn't it? I mean, you're looking at how much is going into it.
Even relative to those cost increases, we have outpaced that with the increases in incomes for particularly beneficiaries.
All right. Are you getting a little obsessed with National and with Chris Luxon? Your deputy, Grant Robertson, did a speech at the weekend where he had 19 references to the National Party and 9 to Luxon. What's up with that?
Oh, sorry, was that the... Oh, look, it's really interesting to me that this warrants commentary because it is just tradition. Always has been. I remember sitting through speeches from Michael Cullen, exactly the same. That slot often is the place where you just talk about the choices coming into an election between a Labour government and a national government. It's not unusual, so that for me is why it doesn't really warrant much commentary.
But I suppose it's because you have been a Prime Minister that has prided yourself on kindness and showing compassion in politics and not getting down in the gutter, getting dirty, that kind of thing. And then here we are, 19 slag-offs.
And I don't consider we have, but when you come into an election, and I stand by that, absolutely, I'm not resiling from that at all. But I don't think it's getting in the gutter to make policy comparisons or just make sure that when someone's putting up proposals that you're having a decent debate on them. That's just democracy. And I think in New Zealand, we all do it relatively well.
All right, let's talk about some of those issues then. One of them you guys put forward at the weekend was the childcare subsidies, which is going to help, should help a lot of Kiwi families. Do you know, when it comes to early childhood education, we're putting more money into this with the subsidy, do you know how many early childhood teachers we're short?
Yeah, well, so I was actually having this conversation with the Minister of Education. We already have 3/4 of those who would be eligible, for instance, 3+, in receiving 10 hours or more of early childhood education. And so it's quite hard to quantify shortages and coverage, but you can tell from the high rate of children, I mean, we want it to be even higher, the high rate of children experiencing 10 hours or more, that we've got pretty good coverage already at the moment. But, of course, as I say, it's quite hard often to quantify that because of the way that ECE is structured. We are mindful, though, of making sure that we keep ensuring that we have a really robust sector. There's a bit of work for us to do there, but it is something we'll keep an eye on.
So you don't know, you haven't asked how many teachers we are short, or like how many teachers, early childhood education teachers, we have brought in to New Zealand since the borders opened, for example. Did you ask any of these?
That I could find out. That's not a number I have off the top of my head around immigration or visas.
Wouldn't you have asked? Wouldn't you have been wanting to know that before you pump more money into a sector, that it has the capacity to deal with what you're trying to, the outcome you're trying to...
The reason that I can answer the question that we already have 75% coverage of our children is because we had the conversation around, can we make sure that we're meeting the demand that might increase as a result? So we know we already have 75% of our kids already in ECE. Keep in mind, Ryan, a large number of parents already access it, but it's very expensive. So this is for some, but depending on their child's age. So the subsidy will often, in some cases, make it cheaper for those who may already be accessing it. Some new may access it, and we, of course, are making sure all of the time that we're reviewing our policies to make sure that we have enough coverage to meet any increasing demand.
So you're saying that you're going to have more, should there be an increase in demand, which you would expect there would be, you're going to train early childhood education teachers by the time that demand...
Ryan, here it's really important to keep in mind here that the early childhood education sector is not like primary schools or secondary. It has a lot of private provision, obviously a lot of private provision, and so it's not quite the same as other sectors, but there are things that we can do to make sure that we're supporting the sector.
Can I just read you a quote, Prime Minister? We don't have enough teachers to go around. That's causing some centres to close. That statement was given by the Early Childhood Council Chief Executive in June.
And look, one of the things that we're looking at is where some places we have new centres opening where there's lots of provision, and other parts of the country you may have not enough. So there's lots of reasons that can contribute to that, and as I say, we've been looking at and thinking about how we can play a supportive role in an environment, as I say, that is quite a complex one because of the private provision.
Okay, so just to finish, and we've got to let you go, but just to finish, anyone who wants and is entitled to more childcare because of the policy you announced yesterday, everyone who wants it will get it.
We will be doing everything we can to ensure that every community has the early childhood access that they need. But that's always been our focus, and as I say, 75% of people already are accessing.
All right, Prime Minister, thank you very much for your time this morning. We really appreciate it, as always.
Thank you.